Hey, Ralph here. Welcome back to the RHCSA tip of the week. Today we're going to talk about user management, specifically about local user management. It's a pretty important topic, both from the exam standpoint as well as supporting servers in production. I mean, the user account or the user object is really the primary security principle for software-based security. So when we talk about assigning permissions to files and login security, printing security, things like that, it really centers around users, each user having a individual user account that they can log in as. So let's go ahead and get started. This shouldn't take super long, but so here we have the objectives, and I always like to start with the exam objectives. And if we search the objectives for user, first thing we get in is login and switch users and multi-user targets. There's a different tip of the week on how to work with the different targets within systemd. But then we have a whole exam domain, that's really centered around managing users and groups. So I'm going to zoom in on that for a second. So as you can see, like I said, it's an entire exam domain. Pretty much impossible that they wouldn't ask you to do some level of user management here. Most of these tasks that are listed are pretty straightforward. Create, delete, modify local user accounts, change passwords, adjust password aging information for local user accounts, create, delete, and modify local group membership. So those are really the tasks that we're going to focus on and center our attention on as we go through this particular piece. And again, a lot of people have a fair amount of experience doing this. They've taken a class and that sort of thing. But I just want to make sure that you kind of understand what's going on, that you understand the basics, and you don't get caught up with any of the different concepts when you step into the exam room. So let's go ahead and take a look. Bring up my system here. Let me go ahead and full screen that. All right. So first off, this idea of a user account. So we can create user accounts on the system, and when you create, I'm going to attempt to freehand here a user account. What actually happens? What are the files that are modified when we create a user account on the system? So the commands that we're going to use here, primarily will be the user add command to add a user. We will use the user mod command to modify a user. We'll use the group add command to add a group, and we probably won't look a whole lot at the group mod command, but there is a command for modifying groups as well. We're dealing with passwords and aging information. We're going to use the password command, and then there's also the change aging information command. All right, now in terms of the file system, what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the etc login defaults. We're also going to look at the etc scale directory. I'll explain what the purpose of the scale directory is in a minute here. We're also going to take a look at the etc password, and that is a colon delimited file where user account information is stored. We're going to take a look at the etc shadow file, and this is where our password hashes and our aging information is stored. We're also going to take a look at the etc group file. There is also a group shadow file, though I don't think we'll probably end up taking a look at that particular file. Share-based security, group password security is not something that gets used all that frequently, and not really an objective for the exam, but it does exist. So to make a mess of this picture, when we run the user add command to create a user, it's going to take the login defaults command and the contents of the etc scale directory, and those are really going to be inputs, if you want to think about it that way, where it's going to read the settings from the etc login defaults, and it's going to actually copy the contents of the etc scale directory into the user's home directory or default directory, whatever we want to call it. Now, what is it going to write to? Well, the user add command, when we run the user add command, is actually going to write out to the etc password file. So it's going to create an entry for the user. It is also going to create an entry in the etc shadow file. And because Enterprise Linux, Red Hat uses what we call unique groups as opposed to global groups, anytime that you create a user, a group with the same name will be created on the system. So user add will actually cause the creation of a group as well. Now, if we do a group add is really just going to add the group. So that would go ahead and just write out to etc group. Now the modification commands, if we take a look at like user mod, for example, typically user mod might write out to a variety of different accounts. If user mod is being used to lock an account, then it would write out to the etc shadow file, because that's where the password information and the aging information is stored. If user mod is being used to change the primary group ID or to add a comment field for the user, then that would write out to etc password. If user mod is being used to add a secondary group to the user, then that would write out to like the etc group file. So it's difficult, not sure what exactly user mod is going to write out to, because that's going to depend on what we're actually using it for. The password file and the change aging files, those files typically will modify the aging information in the password information that's stored in the shadow file. That's typically where they're going to write. So we're going to kind of systematically walk through this, and then I'll show you a little bit of demos and what's actually happening under the hood as we create a user. So first off, let me go ahead and remove that from the screen. And I'm already logged in as root here. And if I list the contents of the etc scale directory, it doesn't show me any values. Now if I go back and I list all files, you'll see that there are some hidden files. So what happens when a user is created is the contents of the etc scale directory will actually be copied into the user's account. Now this is only on creation of the user. So whatever we put in there will be copied to the default or the home directory of the user, but that isn't retroactive. I'm going to go ahead and make a couple directories. So let's make a directory called bin and put it out there in etc scale. What am I doing here? Sorry, I haven't had much Mountain Dew this morning. Must be. All right, let's try one more. I'll create a directory in there called public _ HTML. All right, now let's take a look at the login defaults. Okay, so this is just a default installation of server with GUI rel 7.1. So open up that file. So etc login defaults. And that's probably gonna be kind of hard for you guys to read. So let's go ahead and set background equals light. Tell VI improved. And we got, oh, much better. Okay. So a couple things of importance here. Certainly you see down here where it says password max days, minimum days. This is our aging information. So these are the default values that are going to be placed in the aging information when you create a user. So the maximum days the users can keep their password is 99,999. That probably doesn't conform to security policies inside your organization. So you might want to change it here so that, as you create users, they're actually going to be in compliance. The minimum days the user must keep the password is on there, as well as the minimum length and the warn age. You also see that the user IDs on the system, the UID, to the Linux system, you really are just a number. Regular user accounts are going to start at 1,000. And the maximum is going to be 60,000. System accounts there at 201 through 99. Other things of note here, do we want to create a home directory when we create the user? And the answer is yes. The permissions that we're going to apply, so this is the mask. So remember from our permission discussion earlier, default directory permissions are read, write, execute for user, group, and other. So we are applying the mask of 077, and so what we're going to end up with after we mask that is you're going to end up with 700. Okay, so the permissions that are going to be applied to the home directory of the user are going to be read, write, and execute for the user and the user only. No permissions will be assigned to the group ID of the directory or to other. And that's pretty typical of a default or home directory scenario where only the user has permission to access. Obviously, root always has permission to access those files. All right. So that's where it's going to look for information for what to set up when it creates the user. Now, if we take a look at, and I am going to go ahead and echo set background. Well, let's see here. What do I want to do? All right, let's do this. I'm going to open up the Etsy password file. And we're just going to kind of take a look. So this is the contents of the Etsy password file. And you'll see that it is a colon delimited file. And if we come down here to, let's kind of zoom in here on the bottom. These are my regular user accounts. So this is the username. This X indicates here that we're using shadowed passwords. And so that was normally, traditionally, way back in the day, the shadow file, but that is no longer the shadow file. That's just an indication, or excuse me, that back in the day that was where the password field was stored. Excuse me. Now that's just an indication that we are using shadowed passwords. We have the user ID. Okay, and this is the primary group ID here. So 1000 is the user ID, 1000 is the group ID. Now those will stay in sync, except when you start creating individual groups, then they don't have to be in sync. Now we have the comment field. This is where typically the full name of the user would be. It goes by some different names, but that's the label, the comment, the geckos field. Then we have the location of the default directory for the user, and then finally we have the default shell. Okay, so we said we are creating home directories, so we'll create a home directory underneath home, and the default shell on the system will be bin bash. All right, now we don't typically edit that by hand. We'll potentially run into some locking issues, and so typically we just use user add and user mod to modify the values in the Etsy password file. Now, if we take a look at the Etsy shadow file, and take a look at the root account up here. So what we're seeing here is this is the user ID, and then this is the password hash, and this is a $ delimited field. The first field here indicates the algorithm that we're using. The second field here is the salt value, and then the third field here is the actual hash for the password. Again, we typically don't edit this file by hand. And then beyond that, we have the aging information. Okay, so we have a value on when the last password change was. So the last password change, and that's relative to January 1st, 1970. Okay, we have the minimum password number of days. We have the maximum number of days. Remember, that's that 99,999. This is actually what we call the warn interval. So in 99,993 days, you get warned that you're going to, in fact, have to change your password. And then also, one more file to look at. We have the Etsy group file. And so you'll see the Etsy group file is really another colon delimited file, but we have the group name. We also have that X to indicate we're using shadowed passwords if you did use group passwords, and then you have the group ID. All right, so let's take a look at this in action. I'm going to go ahead and attach to a TMUX session that I have configured here. All right, and actually let me go ahead and see if I can shrink my desktop up a little bit. So that we're actually capturing all of it. All right. I think we got it all. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it looks good. Okay, so what do we have here? Let me kind of show you what I did here. So over here, I'm using the watch command, and the watch command allows you to re-execute a command on a particular interval. The default is 2 seconds here, but over here, we're watching the contents of home demo user. Now, home demo user doesn't exist yet, so we're not seeing anything yet, but I'm just running an ls command on the contents of home demo user. This is going to be my working area. This is the Etsy password file. This is the Etsy shadow file. And then down here we have the Etsy group file. So when I create a user, okay, when I do a user add for demo user, we should see the contents of the Etsy scale directory copied over here into home demo user. We should also see an entry added in the Etsy password file, the Etsy shadow file, and then also in the group file. So let's see if that actually happens. So if I say user add and then demo user, there we go. So there's the the bin directory, the public HTML that I created in the Etsy scale. So that got copied in along with the other contents that were already there in Etsy scale. We also have the entry here in Etsy password. We have the Etsy shadow. Now you'll see right now that the password has not been set on that user. So right now I just see that bang bang there. It's indication that the you'll see a bang in the leading the password field there of the shadow file if the account is locked, or in this case because the account's locked because it doesn't have a password yet. And then we also have the demo user group that got created down there on the bottom. You'll see there's the demo user group that got created. All right, so now let's say that I wanted to add a comment field, okay, for demo user. I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in on this top pane here for a second. And so we can use the user mod command, right? So if I do a user mod -- help here, you'll see we have some different options. So if I wanted to add a comment field, then I would use the -c option, okay, as we see there. So I would say user mod, -c, and Mr. Demo for my demo user account. Now before I actually execute this, I'm going to unzoom out. So let me go ahead and do that. So, and what we should expect to see is a modification here. We should expect to see a value get added for this field. Assuming I did things correctly, and there it is. There's Mr. Demo. Okay, so that's what happens when you make that change, when you run user mod. That's what's going to happen. Now, let's take a look at passwords for a second here. So right now, demo user doesn't have a password. I can use the password command to set the password for demo user. So I'll say password demo user. Enter in a super secret password here. And again, keep an eye on the shadow file there. And there we go. The password populates. Now, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this top window again one more time. And if we look at the options for the password command, so I'll do a password -- help here. You'll see that I can use the -l or the -u to lock or unlock the account. And let's first take a look at that. So if I say password -l for demo user, and again, let's zoom back out so we can watch this. What that's going to do, you'll see down here, is it should put, that bang bang in front of the demo user account. So let's test it. And there it is. That's what happens there. And if we unlock the account, it should reverse that process. So password -u for demo user. And there it is. They're all gone. Now the additional things, one of the things they talked about in the objectives was this idea of aging information, right? And so coming back to my password command here, you'll see that I can set an account to expire with the -e. I can set the maximum number of days that we want the user's password to be valid. Let's say that we want to go to 90 days. Okay. So if I say password and then -x and 90 for our demo user. And again, let me zoom back out. And again, we should see this modify the the aging information here for the user. So, and there you go, that went down to 90. Now, one of the options we also had was expire, right? What do you think happens if you expire an account? So we've got the aging information here, and I'm going to go ahead and expire. So password -e for demo user. Just kind of watch what happens there. So remember, we had this field that said this tracks when the last password change was, and this is number of days relative to January 1st, 1970. And so by going through and setting the account to expire, what it did is it reset that to 0. So now the next time I log in as demo user, it'll prompt me for my password, but it will also force me to change my password as part of that particular process. So that's what happens on the expiration. Now, you can also expire accounts as well, but we have the password command. That's an option for this aging information. And then we also have the change aging command, ch-age. And let me go ahead and bring up the help on that for a second. So there you'll see that it gives you the same sort of options that password gave us: minimum days, maximum days, warn interval, those types of things. Now, this does also work interactively. And what do I mean by that? It means if I come up here and I say change aging information for the demo user, it'll ask me what's the minimum password age. I'll say 5 days. Maximum password age, I'll take the default. See, I got the default in brackets there. Last password change. And again, I'm still at January 1st, 1970. I'll keep it there. Expiration warning, I'll set that to 3 days because my users have short attention spans. Not going to affect the interactivity interval. And I'll set the account to expire in 2017, February 1st. All right. And what we should see after we run that is we're starting to see some additional information pop. So there's the 0, there's the 5. Okay, so that's now that I've changed the minimum, 90 here. Expiration warnings now 3, and then the final field here, the account expiration date, and again, that's number of days since January 1st, 1970. So now we have an expiration on that particular account. All right, now let's take a look at group management. That was another thing that we needed to do. So if I say group add accounting, take a look down at the bottom down there, and we should see the accounting group pop in. There we do. So you'll notice in the password field we have the user ID, and then we also have the primary group ID. We have primary groups and we have secondary groups. If I want to modify or add a user to a secondary group, okay, so right now my demo user, if I type in groups for demo user, you'll see that demo user is only in the demo user group. If I want to add demo user to accounting, then I'm not going to use group mod, but I'm going to use user mod, and I'll say user mod and user mod, and then the options here. In fact, let's go ahead and zoom out for a second here, and I'll pull up the help. So you'll see that these are my user mod options, and I have the append option. Okay, appends the user to supplemental groups. Otherwise, you're going to clobber them out of the groups that they're already in unless we use that -A option. And for a supplemental or a secondary group, we use capg. If you wanted to change the primary group, the field that's actually stored in Etsy password, you would use a lowercase g. So let's go ahead and say user mod -A to append -G for a supplemental or a secondary group accounting for the demo user. And keep your eye on the bottom there, and what we should see is demo user populate in as part of that particular group, and that worked. And now if I run the groups command for demo user to list the groups, the demo user is now in the accounting command. If I use the ID command for demo user, you'll see the demo user is now listed as being in the demo user group and also being in the accounting group. So group management is pretty straightforward. Group add to create a group, and then user mod -A capg to add users to that particular group. I think we basically covered everything. Covered user creation, we covered password and aging information, and we covered groups. That didn't take too long. So thanks for watching, and I'll be back with another tip when I find some time. Have a great day.